Merci Sarah, merci tout le monde. C'est un grand honneur d'être ici avec vous pour ce sommet tellement important. C'est très important pour moi comme quelqu'un qui a travaillé pour toute ma vie dans la cause de l'élimination de la menace d'une guerre nucléaire, d'avoir un mouvement des jeunes. It's a huge honor for me to be here with you. I'm going to place myself on a timeline of the nuclear threat. It, those of you, all of you, of course, are young. That's the point. It's a youth summit. But August 6, 1945 is the moment that you're also studying. I know Hiroshima, and then a few days later, Nagasaki, August 6, 1945. I was born in June 1954. My entire childhood, and I sometimes have said that I think over my crib hovered a mushroom cloud. Before I could walk, my mother was taking me on anti-nuclear marches. There was a movement at that time, really mostly moms and housewives and people who were aware suddenly that nuclear weapons testing, the atmospheric vast distribution of radionuclides in the atmosphere, was going to cause a vast increase in childhood leukemia. So initially, the movement to end nuclear weapons testing in the atmosphere was really driven, I think it was actually the first global environmental treaty, because strontium-90, one of the radionuclides released with the testing of nuclear weapons, the human body misread strontium-90 when it entered the body and treated it like calcium. So the body stored strontium-90 where it put calcium in bones and teeth. That led to one way of testing how much nuclear radiation was in our systems was something that back then, a long time ago movement, we're talking about the late 1950s and early 60s, was called the Tooth Fairy Project, collecting the baby teeth of children across North America and around the world, because that's where you could find the strontium-90. But because it got stored in bones, that's why the radiation was causing an increase in childhood leukemia. So that's a timeline. And we saw an increased escalation in the Cold War era of a nuclear arms race. We did get a treaty that ended the testing of nuclear weapons in the atmosphere. That happened in 1963. And then we gradually had, it took a long time, for there to be an awareness that we had to put the nuclear genie back in a bottle. La menace de guerre nucléaire, c'est une crise énorme qui menaçait toute la civilisation, vraiment toute la planète. So we knew we had to do something. I'll fast forward. By the late 1980s and into the early 1990s, strangely enough, we had leadership from the then head of the USSR, Mikhail Gorbachev, who actually worked with Republican US President Ronald Reagan. I had the honor to work with Mikhail Gorbachev in negotiating something we call the Earth Charter. It's still out there, you can find it online. But one of the things Mikhail Gorbachev told us was, he said, we're surrounded by so many, well, he was being translated from Russian into English, so I won't get it exactly right. But he said, we were always surrounded by all these bureaucrats and diplomats, and they're making not much progress with the United States. And I just said, I'm going to call him. He said, what? I said, I'm going to call Ronald Reagan. I'm just going to ask him. Oh, you can't do that. So he said, I called Ronald Reagan, and I said, I think our diplomats are just every meeting to meeting drinking vodka and not making any progress. So I asked him, do you want to end nuclear weapons? Because I do. And Ronald Reagan said, yes, I do. That level of trust between two human beings made a huge difference. We started negotiating the SALT Treaty, the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, and on and on. And now we'd made progress, but here we are in 2025, and the political descendants of Mikhail Gorbachev and Ronald Reagan are Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump. We're closer to the threat of a nuclear exchange than we've been in the last 60 years, maybe even the last 70 years. And yet, in that time span, it's easy to forget that there are thousands of nuclear warheads all poised to be launched. And one nuclear exchange and the amount of radioactive fallout and the effect of that could be to create a nuclear winter. There are only two threats right now on this planet that would threaten to snuff out the life of the planet and human beings. One is the threat of the climate crisis, and the other is nuclear war. They both demand our attention. So here we are, Canada, a country that prides itself on being peacekeepers, and yet here we are. We have now, at the United Nations level, the treaty for the prohibition of nuclear weapons. Enough countries have signed and ratified it that it entered into force. But Canada has not only not signed it, we haven't even been willing to go to the negotiations as an observer country. Now, right there, my buddy, Senator Mary Lou McPhedran, and I go to the meetings on the Treaty for the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons annually at the United Nations as part of a global parliamentarians group to get the world to turn away from the threat. And yet, was it only yesterday we see an announcement from Donald Trump resuming nuclear tests? Get ready, start investing in nuclear weapons, and maybe he can build a golden dome that goes with his golden ballroom, and maybe that'll be enough. It's madness. So I'm just greeting you to say one thing. And I hope any of you won't mind if I reference anything religious, but thank God for you. We need you, every single one of you. So here's some advice. We need to have people think about and not freak out about the threat of nuclear war. It was Albert Einstein who said, the genius physicist whose science led to it, but he said, quote, "The splitting of the atom has changed everything except our mode of thinking, and thus we drift towards unparalleled catastrophe." Close quote. But think about it. Where does the hope lie? It's in changing our mode of thinking. We should be able to do that. You don't have to be a genius physicist to figure out, wait a minute, it's what's between our ears that's going to make the difference. It's our culture. It's what we talk about. It's what we care about. It's what we tell our MPs we care about. So you, as a youth movement, will make the difference. We desperately need you. Here's some ideas, things you can do. Look to your local Rotary clubs at home. Ask them if they'd like to have a speaker. I belong to a Rotary club. I don't think there's a Rotary club in Canada that wouldn't say, oh, thank goodness, we've just had a request from a high school that wants to tell us about the Youth Nuclear Summit they just attended. Let's invite them. Let's get involved. Rotary happens to be a global service club, so they've got partners, and every Rotary club has partners and friends all around the world. It's worth thinking about them because they're very mainstream and they're easy to approach. Write letters to the editor at your papers. They're already here today? Because Rotary International, I think, can be a real force for peace. They have 5 pillars of Rotary action. One of them is now environmental protection, so I'm really thrilled about that, and also the quest for peace. And of course, Rotary has been doing amazing work to eradicate polio around the world. And again, now that's under threat because of the US withdrawing from global health efforts. Anyway, I'm not here to rant on. I just wanted to thank you. The youth peace movement, the youth nuclear movement, this nuclear summit, and I've seen Leah and other youth members here at those meetings at the United Nations. The doors are wide open for you to come to Parliament, to come to the United Nations, to jump on a train and join a peace train trip across Canada. We need to talk about the threat of nuclear war. We need to put pressure on our current government to stop not just sitting on the sidelines. We're so far away from the negotiations on the Treaty for the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, we refuse to sit on the sidelines. That's called observer status. We won't even go there. Other NATO nations have sent delegations to the United Nations for the Treaty for the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. There are other instruments. There's other threats. No matter what anyone tells you, Any new nuclear reactor increases the threats of nuclear proliferation because there is nuclear fuel is bomb-making material. In any case, I just wanted to say un grand merci à toutes et tous. Merci d'être ici. C'est tellement important que nous avons joigné les mouvements pour mettre fin à la menace de guerre nucléaire. On doit le faire. We have no choice. We have to pick up our own power as citizens to protect our future and that of every other creature on this planet. Merci mille fois. Thank you.